Welcome everyone to HotSporting Premium News web podcast. It's the first ever edition and one of many to come. I'm your host Andi, and today I'm joined by the Honorable Larry Wainstein to talk to us about what is happening in the sport of boxing and what he's doing. Larry, welcome to the HotSpot podcast. It's been a long time.
Thank you. Yes, it has. And just let me wish you guys all the best on your show. May you have many, many more.
Yes, thank you very much, Larry. Well, take us back, Larry. How did you get involved in sport? Just take us back. I know that you've been involved, and we'll talk about that. But just take me your meeting with sport.
I grew up in Turfentine. I was one of 5 boys, and my sport days goes back to amateur boxing in the beginning when I was still a youngster with my brother Morris, who was a professional fighter, with amateur first and then turned professional. I come from a boxing family, but my roads changed in probably when I was turned 16. I still boxed up until then, but then I got signed up to play for Highlands Park soccer. So I gave up boxing for soccer, and that's where my soccer career started, and my love for soccer and boxing, but soccer more than boxing.
Yeah, so you were introduced into soccer boxing when you met in the sport.
Yes.
But the interesting chapter and where I got to know about you is with horse racing. Just tell us about you and horse racing. How did you get involved in that sport?
So, living in Turfentine, the racecourse was down the road from my house. The horses were stabled up in Forest Hill. In those days, they used to walk past the house in the morning, 3-4 o'clock. So as a child, a youngster, we always were introduced to horse racing. So that was the other sport of mine that I loved, was horse racing. In those days, if you were under 16, you couldn't go onto the racecourse. So we used to sneak onto the racecourse and we used to go and look at the horses, go to the stables. So that's when it started.
Mm-hmm. And then how long have you been involved in that industry, and what was your specific role? Because I know that you played a very prominent role in terms of development of that sport when you were involved.
So I became an owner at 22. I got involved in owning horses, and I always aspired to being, because I used to see these people in the parade ring with their horses, their colours. And as a youngster, that's where I wanted to be one day. And so as 22, I bought my first horse. I was young to get colours, but I got it. And then what I did is I got involved in it in quite a big way. And then that was from the ownership side. And then many years later, there was an issue with the running of racing. And the owners felt that they weren't being looked after properly. The people on the boards were all these people that had old money, and they treated the people not right. Anyway, we decided to complain and put something up. And then what happened is we formed a committee, and the next thing I know, they voted me in as the chairman, and then I was running racing as well as doing my business. When I say running racing, I represented the owner's body, the Racing Association, which the Racing Association, just quickly, owned 49% of Phumelela, because they then were listed, and that was the body that I ran for all owners. And that's where I ran. And I ran that for 3 years, and then I brought a good friend of mine, William Nseli, in because we were trying to transform it. He came in as chairman, and I looked after him for a year, and then I said I'm leaving, and I was asked to stay on because Phumelela was buying Cape Town, and they wanted me to stay on as CEO, which I did. And all in all, my time in racing in administration was 19 years.
Wow.
So that's why I was there. But in that time, I still had my businesses because I said I don't have to give it up. But racing took up full time.
Yes.
And my son and my daughter were in the businesses, so I still worked with them. But most of the time I was in horse racing.
That's quite a long time, Larry, and we really appreciate the role that you've played when it comes to South African horse racing. And moving on from racing, just the horse racing, just your take on the current state of things as someone who's outside now. What is your take on the state of horse racing? I know there are many players now talking about racing one, but just your take from the outlook.
So obviously racing became under pressure when Phumelela got closed down and Mod took over, and they sold off certain things and they carried on. But racing will never die. But the only thing that that I get very sad about is the people who keep racing going, the punters, the everyday man, and that's what we fought for. They aren't given a fair shake in racing, and the owners are paying a lot more, and the stakes are less. So like anything, unless you're doing it right, which I'm not saying they're not, but there's a lot that had to be done to get it to a position where the glory days will come back. But worldwide, it's a problem. If you look England all over, the costs go up, stakes don't go up. So how do the owners keep buying without that happening?
It's quite difficult. But let's move on swiftly, Larry, and come to the fistic sports of boxing, the pugilist sport, what you're currently involved in, where you play an important role. I know that you're involved in a lot of different roles, but can you just take us now from horse racing to boxing? What is your role currently, and who are you working with?
So which a lot of people don't realize, but in 2017, when I was still running the Racing Association, I started putting on boxing tournaments. I started because my license wasn't out under Unleashed at Turfentine.
Okay.
So we used to do the tournaments at Turfentine, but what we did is, because we used to be able to take the footage and put it into the betting shops, we'd always do it on a Sunday, so that people could go into the betting shops and watch the boxing on a Sunday.
Yes.
So my brother had fighters, and Lionel Hunter had fighters, and my good friend and my son, the Duma, was fighting for my brother. So at that stage, he had already won 3 belts, but that's where I started with boxing, and I was in it from 2017 to the late 2018, and then I had a fallout with BSA and with the ABU, Dr. Nkatani, and I just walked away from it. I said, not for me, I've got other things to worry about, and then I stopped. But then what happened was, two and a half years ago, and it's all his fault. The Duma, my brother passed away, and the Duma was left on his own, and he said, now what am I going to do? So I said, I'll manage you. But what happened was, you're still battling to get fights. Boxers don't get fights if you're not aligned with the promoter, or you don't know anyone. No matter how good you are, you battle to get fights. So the Duma came back after we sent him to London. He came back, and we then sat down one day after with Berman's, the episode with Berman, I think people know about. And he had 2 fights with him, and the third fight he said, I'm not fighting because the man was treated him not right. But that's be that as it may. So he said, now what are we going to do, Uncle Les? I said, don't worry. We're going to do it, but we must do it properly. Because when I was at horse racing, that's 10 years ago, I developed streaming for horse racing. So I said, we've got to find a streaming company that can do the streaming, because we were talking to people about streaming that do it in America. And they saying, they've been developing it for 3 years and that, but 10 years ago we were doing it. But the big problem is, they want to do pay-per-view. And the people can't afford to pay to view the footage and then still pay for data. So then I said to him, we need to find a streaming partner that's going to work the way we want them to work. So we drove around, and we'll tell you about a few instances. The one Saturday in the pouring rain, with Vision View was doing a tournament in one of the locations, and we drove, and then as we were getting to the tournament, the guy phoned me and said, sorry, the tournament's been cancelled. Anyway, we got hold of them, and I said to him, this is what we want to do. I want you to stream Boxing 5. I'm going to promote you as Boxing 5 Vision View, but what we need to do is you've got to give the footage for free. Because my idea is, I've got an advertising agency, and the big thing with advertising agency is you normally sell advertising. And how does that work? It works on eyeballs. So it depends how many people are watching. Because once you do that, then you can go to the corporates and say, this is how many people are your viewership, and this is how much it is, and this is the eyeball numbers, and then they can look and see a return on investment, or they're happy that so many people are seeing their logo. And that's what we sat down and said, right, we're going to do this, but we need to have a proper strategic plan. We met up with Riaz Bayat. We had a first tournament there, and I said to him, I'm doing this. Are you interested in coming? You will provide the place where we fight and everything. the venue, and he said no problem, he's happy to do that, and he brought raw gear into it. Then I approached Colin to help me with Laduma, because people don't realize, as a promoter, you can promote and do, but you don't know everything in boxing.
Yes.
And I don't know which fighter, who he must fight, like who must Laduma fight to get rated so he can get a chance at it.
Yes, those things count. Yeah.
And Colin, there's no better man than Colin. So I said, would you, and he can't be part of Boxing 5 as a promoter because he's a licensed manager.
Yes,
trainer.
no doubt. Yeah.
So I said, okay. So we then decided all our fighters must sign up with No Doubt Management. Colin will be advisor to Boxing 5, and those fighters will fight for Boxing 5. Riaz will provide a venue, and we had a complete sort of structure. Which now, I've got to say, I feel sorry for other promoters, because everyone says, well, how does Boxing 5 do it? Well, we do it because I've got an advertising agency. I've got 2 kids that do all my creative and all my stuff, which I don't have to pay them because the company pays them. So the promoter, if they want to do what we do and put out posters and put out this and put out content and that, they have to pay for it. We don't. And that was the way that we structured it. And we said, we'll give it 2 years, 3 years and see where we're going. And then this is how any business you start, you've got to put in. Yes. And people think promoters make all this money. We've been in boxing. Boxing 5 is new, up and coming, has been in boxing now for almost, I would say, 26 months. We've done 13 tournaments.
Wow.
We are yet to make a profit on a tournament, but that's not the issue. If we can just wash our face, as I say, break square, you can put into the next tournament. So you're not keep putting money in, but you're growing your brand. And that's what it's about.
Yes, and I think also giving an opportunity to boxers, to fight, because for some boxers, they struggle to get this fight. So you're really doing well as Boxing 5. But what are you currently working on also as a promotional company? Is there anything on the cards that you might want to inform our viewers about?
Very much so. So we got a tournament on the 26th of April. The 26th of April is what we've called, and there's a few tournaments where people call it development. But then you've got 1 or 2 boxes, because you need the boxes to bring the crowd and to get, because you cover your expenses with bums on seats. So you look at the boxes, a few guys that you've got up and coming that puts the bums on the seats. But this time we've given it a shot. We've signed up probably 7, 8 new licensees. They just got their license, and we're putting on a 10-card fight, 6 rounds, and the rest are 4 rounds. And of those, only 2 fighters have got their licenses and fought before. The rest are all first timers. Now that's a proper development tournament.
Wow. Well, you're doing really well, Larry, and kudos to what you are doing and giving those boxers an opportunity, because we know that some boxers really struggle. But because of time, we don't have much time left. I have so many questions that I want to ask you. But what role would you like, what legacy would you like to leave in the boxing industry? What mark do you think you can make, and what mark do you want to leave?
It's great to say this is what I want to leave. But the why Boxing 5 works is because we all work together as like-minded people. So, and not one person can do it all. So the legacy that I want to leave, it's not Larry Wainstein, it's Boxing 5. And we've already, I think, put our names in the history books. In 2 years, we've got the first WBO champion in South Africa that we've got within 2 years of promoting. And our thing is to through boxing, is to create opportunities to change lives. That's what it's about. You change lives. It's not about me walking around and saying how great I am. If you can change somebody's life, that's the legacy we want to leave, and see how many people's lives we can change. Phumelela, Cafu, look at that. We've got boys that we've given opportunities. I mean, Laduma Lamati went to Ireland. So all of those things, that is life-changing. So that's what we're about. And there's no egos in Boxing 5. It's not about me, Colin, or Riaz, or Laduma, who's part of Boxing 5. It's about leaving that legacy that boxers know, and people just want to join Boxing 5, and we can't take them all. So from that point of view, I think we're achieving what we want to. And so we've got the development tournament, and then on the 24th of May, we've got the world title defense.
Oh, wow. That's a huge one. We'll be looking forward to that. And then we've seen some few belts being introduced. I know that in the beginning, we were also involved in establishing WBC offices here in South Africa. but also as Boxing 5, you have belts that you give to fighters in your tournaments. Can we touch base on that?
So you know, as you go, and that's what people don't realize. As a promoter, you don't just pick 10 fights or 6 fights and you just put them on. You've got to look at it, because especially if you're doing content, you want people to be interested, you want people to be there, and you want it to be exciting. So we've made a few mistakes in the beginning, but we've put it right. So you put certain fighters on that will bring quite a nice crowd. So if you put them on early, the minute they finish, the crowd leaves.
Yes.
So now you're saying, you know, that's not good for television, and people see him. They say there's nobody there, but there was. But you don't want that. And so what we've done is we looked at certain things, how we place the fighters on the bill. We spoke to A.B. Manisi, our matchmaker, who's part of Boxing 5, big part. And we said, we don't want to put on just any fights and the guys get knocked out in the first round. We want to have competitive fights. So how do we do that? We created the Fight of the Night belt, where you give the boxers a bonus if they are the Fight of the Night.
Okay.
We developed that Fight of the Night belt. And then when the people, at the end of the tournament, people, when they come in, they then say who's going to be Fight of the Night. They have to wait for it to be drawn, and they can win money at our tournaments. That's been very successful. Then we also created for Laduma Eastern Cape belt that for for guys that have done well. And because where he came from, the Eastern Cape, we wanted to give it to amateurs or the achievement. It's called an achievement belt.
Okay.
Because boxers love fighting for belts.
Yes.
Never mind a world champion. But you can't believe how they talk about boxers, Fight of the Night and all those achievement belts. And then we also developed other belts which people are confused about, because our South African champion and our Gauteng champions never got belts. They got given it and it was taken away. Now I see they're presenting this to them.
Yes.
But we gave those guys who didn't have, we gave our champion Potties, we gave him a South African belt. We gave Kane Fourie, we gave him a Gauteng belt. My other fighter, Katlego, he won the Gauteng belt. We gave him a belt. So that's what we do. You know, it's not our belt. It's a belt because BSA didn't provide them with belts.
Talking about BSA, that is just before my last question, Larry. We've seen a lot of changes in terms of who's in control of Boxing SA. There have been a lot of changes, you know, the minister taking this board in, this board out. Just your take on what's happening in SA. Do you think we are in the right direction? And do you think that maybe boxing is in good hands?
I got to say this, you know, I'm a very, very... First of all, let me say this. There's 2 sports in South Africa that's governed by the Act. One is horse racing and one is boxing. And I've been in both. That's why I understood when I came into boxing, when they talk about the Act, they can't tell me about the Act because I dealt with it for 18 years. And I dealt with Parliament over the years. So for me, all I'm saying is, until they put the board in, and I have to give them their due, and you give the man a chance until you've proved wrong.
Yes.
So that's where that is. BSA, they've got a lot of work to do, and there's just certain times when they miss out where they could be putting their foot, making a stance and saying, we control boxing, not everybody. And there's a few things that they just lackadaisical about, and that concerns me. But please goodness, they'll get it right. And I'll give them a chance too under the new board. So let's see.
Well, because of time, Larry, we've come to the conclusion of our interview. Hoping that we'll see you in this podcast again, talking to us about important things that are happening and also what Boxing 5 is doing. Your parting shot before we close?
All I want to say is thanks to people like yourselves who put boxing out there and let people understand about it. And, the more people we get to watch, the easier it is to go and not ask for, please sponsor, sell advertising. And that's the key to the whole thing, is to sell advertising. And if boxing just stays on the right path and doesn't give it a bad name, things will get a lot better.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the conclusion of our podcast with our guest, Larry Wainstein. Hoping that we'll have him for the second part of this podcast. Thank you very much. Thank you, Larry.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.